What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Another episode of Seahawks Now. More news from Micah Parsons and the Cowboys. Really, it's no news. There is still not a contract extension on the table for Micah Parsons in Dallas. And there are some questions about whether or not the team could potentially try to shop him. I think the Seahawks should absolutely call here. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, we talk about another wide receiver draft prospect, continuing my little mini series on wide receivers that I would love to see this team draft. We're talking about Kyle Williams out of Washington State University. Plus, the NFL has made some new rule changes today. How will those affect the Seahawks and the rest of the league going forward? All that and more today on Seahawks Now, brought to you, of course, by Fan Arch. And let's get into it, guys. Micah Parsons and the Cowboys reports today that Micah Parsons' agent is getting in the way of a potential record-breaking deal. The Cowboys are looking to offer him somewhere in the ballpark of $40 million a year. Micah Parsons wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL history. That would be about $42 million a year. Now, he only has 1 year left on his current contract, so if he doesn't get that, he could always hold out, or the team could decide to trade him, and he could seek his record-breaking contract next season. A lot of people close to the situation do believe that they want to be reunited, but what if they don't? What if there is an issue? What if the Jones family has had enough? What if they decide we don't want to be the team to pay him $40 million a year? That's too much for a guy who's not even the best defensive player in the NFL. He's only getting this money because of his age and because this is, the phase in his career that he's at. If he would have signed an extension last year, he probably would be making $35 million, and he would be happy with that. But instead, he wants to maximize his value right now. I get it. He's a football player. I don't think he's selfish in any way, but maybe the Cowboys say, look, we think you're worth that, but we're not the team who's going to pay you. The Seahawks should call. They should at least call. There's no harm in calling. Micah Parsons is a true game changer. He's a game changer as true as anyone in the league has ever been a game changer. He literally can wreck the opposing quarterback by himself. He can get past the offensive line better than almost anybody in the league. He can rush the quarterback and get to the passer better than anybody in the league. Twice he was an all-pro first-team selection in his first and second season. The dude is an absolute baller. He's an absolute stud. And yeah, he's one of those few guys in the league that you actually could trade a king's ransom to get. I talked about it with Myles Garrett when we thought maybe he was on the trade block. But these are the types of players that you trade 2 firsts and you don't feel bad about it. Like, I understand the Seahawks are probably still, scarred from the Jamal Adams deal. And I get it. That was a bad deal. We traded 2 first rounds for a safety who just underperformed and was injured basically his entire career in Seattle. But Micah Parsons, he's a better player than Jamal Adams. He's truly a game changer, right? Safeties don't change the game in the same way that a great edge rusher does. Think about all the great edge rushers: Chris Jones, T.J. Watt, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, and Micah Parsons. That's kind of the 6 guys that I fall into that category. Those 6 guys can legitimately alter the course of an NFL game just because of what they are doing. And it's so big to have somebody like that. It's so massive to have somebody like that. The Seahawks already have a good line. They have Leonard Williams. They have the big cat. They have rookie Byron Murphy. They got Uchenna Nwosu coming back. Boye Mafe. It's not a bad line. But if you add Micah Parsons to it, it probably becomes the best defensive line in the NFL. And then all of a sudden, you go from being, kind of a solid contender with a decent defense to being maybe the best defense in the league, combining that with Witherspoon in the secondary, in the back end, Julian Love, Witherspoon. All of a sudden, the Seahawks, you start to ask the question, do we have the best defense in the entire NFL? And once you're starting to get to that point, then it's like, okay, we are truly a contending football team. And that's where they should want to be. So, it might not be likely. There's probably a good chance that Micah Parsons does go back to the Dallas Cowboys. But if I was the Seahawks, I would at least offer to trade for Micah Parsons, because I think that he is the type of guy that, yeah, he can really change the game for the positive. He can change the game for the better. And you want a guy like that on your roster. You do. All right, let's move on. Draft prospect. We continue our wide receiver prospect series. WSU wide receiver Kyle Williams. If you've never heard of him, check out some of his tape. I'm at Wazoo right now. Go Cougs. But Kyle Williams, this guy is climbing up draft boards really, really quickly. Take a look at his stats. last year with the Washington State Cougars under star quarterback John Mateer, now of Oklahoma, Kyle Williams went for 1,198 yards, caught 70 passes, 14 of those went for touchdowns, 17.1 yards per reception, and he caught 92.5 yards per game. And let me tell you, as somebody who watched Kyle Williams live, I think 7 or 8 games this year, Kyle Williams is the real deal. I mean, he is absolutely the real deal. He is going to become as advertised. Look, the 17.1 yards per reception, yeah, he's a big play threat. He's a big play weapon. If you guys watched him in the Holiday Bowl, he was fantastic there. Almost 1,200 yards receiving on just 70 receptions, and he caught 14 touchdowns in 13 games. So he was averaging more than 1 touchdown reception per game. So yeah, he's a big play threat. He's always a scoring threat. I think he legitimately has wide receiver 1 or top end wide receiver 2 upside. I know there's a lot of kind of draft analysts who've kind of soured on Kyle Williams. I understand, the competition last year for the Cougars was not amazing, but it was still NCAA Division I football, and Kyle Williams was dominant as any receiver could have been last year. Didn't really get the recognition in the season, but now he's starting to creep up draft boards. Initially, when I saw the early mock drafts in January, some of them he wasn't even on those mock drafts. A lot of people thought maybe he would be, a 7th round pick or even an undrafted free agent. Now I'm pretty consistently seeing him on draft boards about the 4th round, 5th round, sometimes even pushing his way into the 3rd round on some draft boards. So his stock is definitely climbing. He had a really good NFL Combine day. He played in the Senior Bowl. He's quick, he's shifty, he makes contested catches. There's no reason why this guy could not be, a really, really good NFL receiver. I think he totally can, and obviously, I'm biased, but I would love to see Kyle Williams come to Seattle. I think he would be a perfect 3rd or 4th round pick. You're not committing a ton of resources to him, but you're committing to giving him 3 or 4 years run as your number 2, 3 receiver. See how it goes, because I could see down the line Kyle Williams becoming a really high-end number 2, backing up JSN, and he could replace Cooper Kupp as that number 2 receiver. So, yeah, I'd love to see Kyle in Seattle. He's also just a fun personality. He's really nice. I've got to talk to him before. He's a really nice player, a really good person. And I think he would really thrive in Washington. Obviously, Washington State University, not in Seattle, but Washington State, you can keep him local, keep him in the Pacific Northwest. You'd have a lot of fans crossover between the Cougars and the Seahawks. I would love to see this happen in Seattle. All right, finally, let's talk about the NFL rule changes. We found out this morning that there's a new kickoff rule as well as new overtime rules. Is this a big deal? Yeah, this is a big deal, man. New rule changes. So the kickoff is now, the touchback's now going to be 35 yards, which means essentially kickoff returns are going to become more common because teams, as touchbacks become better and better, kickers do not want to kick the ball into the end zone anymore. They're going to want to, kick it to the return man at about the 5-yard line. They want to see more returns in the NFL. And so, yeah, this is absolutely something that is going to be happening. This is absolutely something that the Seahawks, they need to find a great kick returner in that case, right? Because, obviously the touchback at the 35-yard line, that's great for offense. That's going to be fantastic if they get that. But most teams are not going to want to give anybody a chance to have the ball at the 35-yard line. That's insane. It used to be the 20. Now it's all the way up to last year it was the 30. Now they're pushing it to the 35. And what's next? The 40, 45? You never know, but they're really trying to incentivize teams to not just kick the ball into the end zone. They want teams to force them to actually return the kickoff, which, maybe also kind of goes against their whole thing about wanting to reduce kickoff injuries, but, to each their own. The NFL wants more kickoff returns. The Seahawks need to find a great kickoff returner ASAP, in my opinion. It might be Stephen Jones. It might be River Craycraft. It might be somebody else. But maybe MVS. Maybe Marquez Valdez-Scantling needs to do it, or you draft somebody. But I think that's a big deal. And then the other one is overtime. Both teams are now allowed to possess the football. So if the first team scores before 10 minutes, the second team will get a chance to have the football, even if the first team scores a touchdown. So they're basically doing what they do in the playoffs. This is a big deal as well. I think that this is going to really affect the Seahawks because the Seahawks are always a team that plays a lot of close games. So I think this is very helpful. I think it'll take a lot of pressure off the team who gets the ball first. And I think that, hopefully it'll allow, if the Seahawks are in overtime next year, if Sam Darnold and then the boys don't get the ball first, the defense can still get the stop, and the Seahawks can still win the game. With that all being said, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. As always, this has been another episode of Seahawks Now. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below. Thank you so much for helping us reach 200 subscribers. It really means a lot. And until next time, go Seahawks.